Hey,
Good morning.
Mark. Oh, hello, hello.
How are you, sir?
You
I'm
can let all
great.
you
How about
guys
yourself?
go. There we go.
Hi, Linda.
Hi guys.
Hello.
How are ya?
My background. I want to change my background. How do we do that here? Hold on.
Under video, under the little up arrow.
Oh, thank you. Choose virtual background. There we go. Just a blur. How's that?
Just like mine.
All right.
Very blurry around here.
I've got books. Should I blur as well?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Books are okay. Yeah, yeah.
Books are good. I have books, but I think it's fairly clearly it's a bedroom, so I was blurring it because I actually didn't look at it before.
He's in Australia, now he's in China, now he's back. Okay.
Pretty obviously about
Oh,
it.
yeah, just rotating. Yeah. There we go. How's everybody today?
Good.
Excellent.
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Good, thanks. I
That's
got my
good.
coffee in hand. It's a fairly nice day outside. Kids are at school.
That's a good day.
That makes things easier some days and
Right.
makes
The
them harder
summer,
later.
we got through most of this, like all the summer, like we had a great summer together. And then the last 2 days, before going back to school, you could sort of feel the tension in the air, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah.
And it's like, thinking about it, it's like the kids have no idea what day it is, so it has to come from the parent.
Yeah.
The anxiety, the oh, we're almost there, and then they feel that tension, and then it becomes a little bit of a gong show for a couple of days, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as a long-term Navy wife, I can tell you that that happens all the time, and it doesn't matter if it's good things coming or bad things coming. It doesn't matter if they're going or coming.
Mm.
It's always like the last 2.5 days or so are tense, and then the first couple of days after it are also all up in the air and weird.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
After like those long-term getaways, like going to alert for 6 months or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like that. Yeah,
yeah.
and it doesn't matter which way it goes. It's just everybody's on edge
Hmm.
both ways.
Uh-huh. Right.
Yeah,
It's like we were trying to make it too perfect, and I was like under pressure and in a rush, trying to take them everywhere in 2 days, and it was like, you know what? Just play video games.
yeah. Relax.
Just
Yeah.
relax.
You'll be fine. It'll be fine. Just
Right.
chill. Awesome. So I had a whole bunch of great ideas and I left them all in the book, which is in the car. So, I thought it would be fun to talk about what it is that, like, why? Why do you guys want to do this? Why is this important to you? Why are we doing this?
Oh, that's a great question. The why is that's huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's sort of how I got kind of hooked on this by you, Linda. You didn't exactly sell me, but your weekly pitch in BNI kind of caught my attention, right? And then I
Right.
think it jived with my past and more importantly my future.
Right.
And and it just, yeah, I think for me it's an opportunity to uh, share my experiences and my insights a little bit. But the goal for sharing is twofold. I would say it's a little bit selfish, but it's hopefully primarily uh, to help other men that are struggling, that have never really been coached or never had a father that was able to coach them, or never had a good role model to follow. Right. And I know, like, amongst my buddies, there's commonality there. Like, we didn't really have great parenting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, and then the selfish part is definitely just to, kind of like the cathartic uh, uh, need to get it out and to share and feel better about it, which hopefully will tell other people that it's okay to share. You know?
Yeah. Well, and I think an opportunity for you to go over what didn't work last time and why, and what you want to do differently this time and
Yeah,
why.
that's the specifics of it for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
agreed.
Okay.
love that. Like, yeah, I just love Mark's story because he's gone through it once and he's going through it again. So it's not everybody gets that second chance, right? So,
Well, it's Tank. You mentioned that, and it was like, what now I remember what got me from Linda's presentation. She was going on about her tagline, which is,
Right.
making good parents great before they become grandparents, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I probably
Yeah.
screwed that
Very,
up.
very close. Not
Close, yeah.
not butchered, but very close.
Close enough, right? That we get the point, right?
Yeah.
So, uh, it's like grandparenting is round three for me, And I not only did I not want to screw up round 2, but I definitely don't want to screw up round 3.
Awesome.
I love that. Yeah. So for me, it's kind of the same thing, which is I had my story. I think is what most people who do anything of service, their why is directly tied to who they are and what they've been through, right?
Yeah.
My experience, I had a rough go of it, and I learned a bunch along the way, and I had a pivotal moment where it was like, aha, like which was my transformation moment. And then from that day forward, I looked around and went, if everybody else knew and had that, holy crap, the world would be better and different. And so I've just spent the rest of my time understanding that moment, how to help give it to other people, how to help other people find their moment and switch into that, because there's just so much trauma and drama that's unnecessary. So my why is to minimize suffering in that regard.
Yeah, minimizing suffering is such a huge issue. I find personally that my big why behind all of this parenting information is because I really think that we have the potential to be a peaceful species, and our culture is really terrible at that. And I'm not sure it's intentionally terrible, but it's genuinely terrible at that. We're terrible at making peace within people, and we're terrible at making peace between people. And I think if we raised our kids in a more effective way that used less of the kind of Marshall Rosenberg calls it violence, even when it's verbal or just not meeting needs. I think if there was less of the violence in between people, there would be less in the world. So
I would agree with that sentiment. Absolutely. Things have changed.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, like I don't want to, you know, touch on a subject that's kind of taboo here for a second, but, you know, in the old days, we all kind of behaved a little bit, I'm going to say better in a way, because of social demands and religious demands. And I find that with the new social construct, there's a lot of freedom, but there's also maybe too much freedom. People are kind of just doing what they want very kind of selfishly without thinking of the consequences type of thing. And I think it's eke its way into family. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think actually what you're suffering from there is the delusion of nostalgia. Because actually one of my favorite blog posts that I ever did is about how, you know, that this generation of kids is, so, you know, it's been said since Socrates.
Okay, so
And it's been said in kind of exactly the same way. It's like, well, back then we all had to. I think it is that we felt a lot of pressure that we're no longer seeing being put on people to adhere to those sort of strict, we all do the same thing kind of morals.
yeah.
And I don't know that everybody ever adhered to all of them, or that the hypocrisy between how people talked about that and how they really acted was ever really very different. But now we have such a broad culture that we aren't even saying as a group, of course, all children need to drink milk at dinner time, as a random example.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There used to be that sort of parallelity in between families and in cohesive neighborhoods, and we just don't have that cohesive neighborhood anymore, which makes it so 6-year-olds can look across the other kid at the desk and go, well, they don't have to drink milk.
Yeah, right.
And that, of course, brings up all that really fun stuff about, okay, but why do we have to?
Yeah.
And often parents just have absolutely no basis for it, except, I don't know, my mom told me I had to, or I don't know, my doctor told me I had to, or my mom's doctor told her she had to.
Well, isn't that the fundamental problem here? Like we are who we are because our parents are the way they are, type of thing, right? And if we don't challenge ourselves and grow from that point, then it's just a continual, you know, the same thing over and over again, right? Like I can hear my dad say, you know, I'm just like my father, type of thing, right? And I can hear myself say, more importantly, I can hear my wife say, you're just like your father.
Yeah. Well, then if that didn't work for you often, I mean, your father's probably a great guy in some ways, but if that didn't work for you often, if that didn't meet your needs often, if that often made you feel misunderstood and unwelcome, you don't want to be like that. You want to be a different way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I like the way you put that. You guys are much better at verbalizing all this. It's almost like you studied this.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Wordy person. Yeah, I talk a lot. Makes me good at it.
I hear myself describe what my goals, and then I hear your goals. I'm like, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, we've been around a lot of discussions, haven't we? Yeah,
Yeah.
we hear a lot of versions, and we take the good and the bad and sift it through.
Right.
I was going to add, I think one of the things that makes the now a little bit different is the speed of technology and adoption. As a species, I think we're growing and learning faster, and which means the kids now can, excuse me, look across the table and have a logical argument at 6 as to why I don't have to drink the darn milk.
Yeah.
We're like, where did this level of amazing come from? So, with that, I think that we, as the older generation, have to learn to adapt, if not adopt, the current now. And I think that's what most parents miss is this is my way, these are my rules, because I damn well said so. And that's as far as most people take it. And I think that unplugging that, and like the one thing I tell my kids is believe nothing unless it resonates with yourself, even if I said it. It causes a lot of discussions, but it makes them independent thinkers, and I get to learn as opposed to just them.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite things about that kind of approach to life, because I had that, well, let's talk about whatever comes up, which made it so that when my emerging reader stopped in front of a bus stop ad that said, oh, we've lost Mark. How sad. Oh, maybe he'll rejoin us. My 8-year-old stopped in front of a bus stop ad and said, which said, because suicide, cocaine, and self-harm aren't dinner table conversations. It was a kids help phone ad.
Okay.
And she looked at it and she thought for a little while and she read it out loud because she was just learning to read. And then we went for a walk and she said, wrong kind of dinner table.
I love that. That's awesome. That's a great story.
I think it's really important to open up to kids and to be as authentic as we can be about why it is that drives us nuts. And if it drives us nuts because when we were kids, we weren't allowed to do that, or because we've constantly felt pressure to perform in a certain way, we can recognize out loud in front of our kids that their behavior has nothing to do with it, and that our internal stuff is all ours.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like the concept of authenticity. I've always kind of focused on that. I mean, at the end of the day, my father was a bit rough, type of thing around the edges, but he was always authentic. And I guess that was his excuse for being overly authentic, if you know what I mean, right? So being like brutally blunt about something, honest about stuff is kind of like that direction, right? Like you're overly authentic to the point where, okay, I trust you, but I also don't like you, like everything. So I've had to kind of put an edit filter, throughout my life and progressively find out where that filter is, because my father clearly had no filter.
Right.
Everything, right? So it was like, okay, my mom was a sweet person, so I knew what a filter was. So it was a matter of like gauging where that filter should be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And somewhere between suffocating yourself with the expectation of being nice and quiet and pretty all the time, and of being so brutally honest to people that they can't handle you at all.
Every time I say something, you guys, it's like you're reading my mind.
It's
Well,
like
question
some of
for
this
you.
human experience is kind of common.
Right.
Yeah, apparently.
So, Mark, I've got a question on that. How much is too much when it comes to authenticity? Like, I get it. There's you can say things in different ways, but if you're 100% authentic, that's the real you. And I don't think anybody ever is. But obviously, it made a mark on you with your father. Like, there must have been a spectrum between mom and dad. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, well, that and it's a confusion. Yeah, I'm trying to navigate it still, but I think there's in my mind, I've probably confused or conflated two issues, right? There's authenticity, and there's probably how you express yourself is probably conflated in there too, right? So
Sure.
I would say being authentic to the point of upsetting others with your beliefs or your thoughts as opposed to facts, type of thing. Like I don't know. That would be sort of how I would initially verbalize it, right? Like be authentic, but not to the point where you're going to hurt somebody.
Right. Maybe be authentic about yourself in a way that's brutally honest, because that's
Yeah.
genuinely difficult to do, and not necessarily being brutally honest about your opinion of other people.
Right, and how you say something, right? Like with which then leads into the opinion part, because the tone you say something is gonna kind of show your true feeling. And yeah, exactly.
Because
Color
we've
it all.
never, as parents, ever said anything in a tone to our children that came across as misread, right?
You know, I kind of
I
realized,
personally, because my children are not here, I can say anything I want. I personally never made any kind of tonal mistakes at all. And my children never got the wrong message, ever.
and
Yeah.
you know what? I think kids are born with the ability to understand all sarcasm at birth, right?
No,
Uh,
no.
I'm not sure I can-
Unfortunately, kids don't learn the ability to do double meaning, like tone versus words, until they're about 12, 13, 14. And
Right.
that means for a lot of kids, especially very sensitive kids, if you say, "Are you wearing that today?" they just, all they can hear is, "Are you wearing that today?" It just comes across as like they don't get the silliness or the double meaning beneath it. They only can hear the words, which is really quite harsh.
a lot of adults haven't progressed past that either, but
Well, and I think a lot of adults haven't progressed past that because when they were kids and people were being sarcastic or teasing them, they could only hear the words. So they're almost primed to hear criticism even when other people don't really mean it.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that is without a doubt, I think one of the biggest things is the misinterpretation. That's like when you're sending a text or an email, you can't convey tone. There's so much information in tone, and with technology advancing as fast, it's just a lost art of communication, an aspect of that is critical to living, much less parenting.
Yeah, no, you're right, and that's where I can complain about social media, but it's really the use of any sort of media that isn't direct, with visual and audio type of thing, right? It can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you can find out years later that somebody took something you probably don't even remember saying in a way that you would never have intended it just because of their understanding of the words rather than your intent or even something like I was kind of distracted by what I was doing and I said something to you kind of offhandedly and there's a lot of opportunities to make a big mess in communication.
Well, yeah, and to tie that in with something you said earlier about being authentic and you grow, like I want to be express myself. I don't want to cap myself, right? But boy, did I ever cap myself for the first 29 to 30 years of my life. It was like, no, just be nice, and don't say what you feel. They're not going to like you if you say what you feel. That type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So then that turns into frustration. So
Yeah.
you're a really sweet person 94% of the time, and I go, wow, 6% of the time, right? And so I'm more like, yeah. And that was my dad. I would say he's a good person. He's a nice guy. But like 5 to 10% of the time, it was like, oh dear God, like
Now it's all going to come out.
yeah. And
Well,
I
and
found
that's
myself.
really
Yeah.
that's really startling and alarming for the people around because they have this sense that you've been pretending and lying the whole time. And the real truth comes out and how you really feel about all this stuff it's really disorienting for people.
Yeah, I've developed much better relationships since I opened up. And I've even gone home and said, oh my God, from a party or whatever, and said, geez, did I say too much? Did I talk too much? I'm one of those people that always like questions themselves, right? When in reality, it was probably fine. And I probably developed a relationship more so like because of trust has been built there, right? So
Yeah, there's nothing like letting the reality out to let real people in.
Yeah, and there's another side to that too, is we might be doing exactly what we want to be doing, but because of the other person's experience, and a really prominent example in my head is my son. He's got one of his stepdads, one of his former, well, I guess it's his current stepdad, whatever, but there's many. Like that interaction between him and those two is what it is. But if I say or do something that is completely authentic to me, it's a trigger from the other relationship. Like, how much do we expand our authenticity? Now I got to understand every relationship he has. Like, there's just certain levels we can't cope with, but to at least be aware of it. And I think that comes down to looking at the other person. So Mark, I think what you're doing now with your round two is you're looking for those cues and you're seeking that feedback, which I think is probably one of the best tools we can do is looking at ourselves through the lens of somebody else.
Wow. Yeah. Well said. Well said. I mean, yeah. Where were you 10 years ago? Come on. This
I
is
was going
this
through
is
it, man. I was going through it.
this is so worded so perfectly, and it strikes home. I mean, that's exactly it. What can I say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the
I
fact that
love
you're doing
the
it.
I love the really simple. There's a difference. One of the things that people get wrong all the time, and it's almost always used defensively, is what people meant. They intended this.
Yeah.
They meant this. And then the other person who's shaking and crying in the corner because of how it landed on them, they don't get to say, yeah, but my impact. When the answer is, well, the intent matters more than anything else, because the fact is the intent doesn't matter.
Right.
You don't stop from killing the cat if you didn't mean to run it over. Like, it doesn't matter what you meant, it matters what happened. And as long as a culture, we stay defensive about what it is we meant, we lose the opportunity to see the impact and to change how we do things. Because when it isn't what we meant, it means that we didn't do it very well and we need to fix it. But until you can get to that sort of understanding that the impact actually matters more than what you meant, you can't constantly refine how you're doing it, because you just, sort of relax in that, well, but that's not what I meant, so you can't take it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a certain level of self-awareness, right? And to see yourself, feedback is the best way to put that, right, Tank? I mean, it's like looking at your kids and going, okay, are they happy? Are they afraid? Are they responding well? Type of thing. It's pretty simple, right? In that sense. But if you're in your own mind and you're not worried about what they're thinking or what they're feeling, I guess that's what it comes down to, is being aware of their feelings, right? From sort of a day one type of thing,
Yeah.
right? And that's, I would say that's the biggest learning that I had from my first set. The first set of kids, I was much more directorial, much more authoritative figure. The word respect came out of my mouth a lot. Military.
Yeah.
And which is not all bad, but yeah, that's just the way it was in my house. And then it did not work. I mean, in this day and age, I mean, I don't know if any day and age.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that it ever worked.
Yeah,
I
right.
think it doesn't ever work. I think one of my favorite exercises to do in workshops is you take a parent and you say, put your hand up, and I put my hand on them, and I don't tell them anything else. And then I push on their hand, and I push on their hand, and I often end up leaning my entire weight on them. And then I say, what do you think happened there? And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, you pushed back.
Newton's law. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you've had a lot of Tai Chi training or something, you don't ever even have to think about it. You automatically and naturally push back.
Yeah.
Because that's how people are.
Yeah.
And we look at 2-year-olds and say, well, they shouldn't be that way. Like, well,
Well,
you
too
didn't
bad.
put your order in early enough. You get what you get, man. Sorry, you didn't tick the right box on the order
Oh,
form.
you get what you get for sure with kids, and
Well,
learning as a parent to be adjustable to their little personalities. And and there's another aspect of it, right? Like in my previous life, I never would have stopped to say, let's have a conversation, as adults, about our child, and what differences there are with this child and how we should treat that child, and do we need to do anything different for that child? Whereas in my current situation, we have those conversations daily. Oh, remember, we can't treat this child like that just because they're siblings. One sibling is good at this, another sibling is good at that type of thing, right? And just accept it, and kind of build your assistance around their skill sets type of thing, right? So, but again, it starts from paying attention to their needs versus yours. It's an unselfish act of parenting.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because that is the core issue about treating children the way they need to be treated, is by meeting their needs. And they don't all need the same thing, and they don't all need the same thing as much as other people. I mean, everybody needs the same things, obviously, but one person might be hungrier than the other. So 5 M&Ms each, when one kid hates M&Ms, one kid hasn't had anything to eat since yesterday at breakfast, and one kid just finished eating 3 bowls of ice cream, there's nothing fair about that kind of treatment. It's in response to what they really need is the way that the treatment can be fair.
Yeah, and we probably just go on autopilot as parents, right? And just okay, you know, I don't want to think about this. What's fair? 5 each. There you go. Move on. Next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I share my story about the word fair and how I treated my
Yes.
kids? I learned early on that fair was not a thing. Like I was the youngest of three. I looked around and I learned early myself. Even if I get exactly what they got, I don't often want it because they weren't as good as me and they got spanking. So I wasn't about to get everything that they got, right? So when I had my kids, I learned that I'm not going to play fair, but it kept coming up. They would use that word fair, and it just clicked one day. I just told them straight up, nobody said life was fair. Get a helmet, get back to work. And to this day, they'll repeat it back to me. Now they're in their teens and 20s, and it's like they get that. And that is such a useful hook, at least for me, to go, you know, you're at work, you're working at Starbucks, and this guy got the promotion and you didn't. Put your apron on and go back to work. She's like, I know, I got my helmet in the car, let's go. Like, it's that trigger for them to realize, okay, I had expectations, but life is not all about me.
I used the a homonym instead. Do you see tickets? Do you see rides? This is not a fair.
I like
Going
that
to
too.
be. And every now and then one of them would say, do you see tickets?
Yes, it lands, right?
Yeah.
Those are the lessons that we get to see in their reaction that land. We know that that's going to get passed on, and we've made a change in the future for whatever generational linkage they create. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. 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 And one of the fun things that I got to learn was 11 o'clock at night's a wonderful time to have a conversation with a child. Because I'm falling asleep and they want to know who made the first human or some little tiny question like that.
Small.
And one of the conversations that we had probably 4 or 5 times, but I felt like it really made a huge impact on my kids, is life will never hold your feet to the fire to be any more than mediocre in anything. If you want to be excellent, you have to drive that.
Yeah, beautiful.
I think my kids have told all of their friends that at some point or another.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, because you know, I called a buddy a couple of weeks ago to reinforce what you're saying, I think. And he was talking about, you know, tough times. He had a week off with the kids. It didn't go so well. And I said, yeah, you know, it can be tough. And we started to reminisce about, you know, certain issues we've had in our lives. And he's like, well, you know what? I think just being there is 9/10 of it. It's like, okay, you know what? You're probably right. It's a good start. It's a baseline, right? Just being there, not leaving. Okay, great. But I don't think we deserve any medals just for being there. You know, like we had the kids, right? Like we should probably want to do a little bit better than just the basics, just the baseline of, okay, I'm here. Now the rest is, you're lucky to have me.
Yeah.
Yeah, bow
Right.
down.
Yeah, I think you've just written the contract how to get divorced in 3 easy steps. Yeah, I'm here, I showed up, we're done. Like,
In all honesty, any relationship's going to fall apart with that attitude, right? Like whether it's with a kid or your spouse or at work, whatever it is, right? So you
exactly.
got to put a little bit of extra, especially into the people part, right? And lessons learned. You know, like I'm a task oriented person who likes to build long term relationships, but I definitely focus on tasks innately. Like before I jump to, oh, and how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
Right? It's like I'd rather get everything done first, and then okay, now we can kind of relax and talk type thing. So I've had to kind of put my task oriented mind on the back burner and focus on the relationship as the task.
Yeah.
Right, type of thing. And that's really hard. It's really hard for me. I mean, I don't know if it's hard for other dudes out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh God, yeah.
yeah, right. It's
I mean, because we, like you said, we have a natural order of events that we're going to do. We're going to do the thing, and then we might talk about it. We might be open to feedback.
yeah,
If we flip that, hey, I'm open to feedback. Okay, what outcome are we really shooting for? Then we do the tasks. That's a win. The other one, it might be a win. We don't know until we're done, and the kid's crying in the corner.
Or your spouse is screaming at you from the corner with the kid
What are these
crying.
papers from the processor? I don't understand.
yeah,
Yeah. How did this happen?
Right?
yeah.
God,
Yeah,
okay.
it's obvious when you look at it from the outside. Like I've started to pay attention to other people, like siblings and just complete strangers and friends, and watch how they parent. And I've got one buddy who's got it all under control. Like it's he's doing a really good job, but he talks a lot about their relationship. He talks a lot about how his daughters are important to him, and how he wants them to grow up, feeling supported and not beaten down in any way, type of thing. So he's like, him and his wife, the biggest fight they have is, you raised your voice at our kids, right? And it's like, I think that's a healthy fight to have, right? It's a small fight. It's a it's not like they lose their minds over it, but it was like, it's the one thing that they're like trying to control. And I'm like, bravo, like you're worried about that. Like you're doing a really good job,
Yeah. Yeah, that suggests very thoughtful parenting most of the time, and a couple of probably trauma and drama triggers from their own past, things that they
Yes.
weren't allowed to know, weren't allowed to feel, or stuff they were ashamed about.
Yeah. It's that fight or flight type of thing, right? You can choose to emulate your parents, or choose to kind of, go in a slightly different direction, maybe, and see if you can learn from their mistakes or your mistakes, and change, right? So yeah, I guess the first time I just copied. Now I'm trying to
Refine
grow,
it.
refine. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the key is like most parents either pick, I'm going to do what they did, or I'm going to do the opposite of what they did.
Yeah.
No, the answer is in the middle somewhere. Like you got to put the work in, you got to figure this out, you got to put some time and effort in to choose, because it's not just A or B.
Right. Because Tank, I'm sure your parents weren't like, I don't know your parents, first of all, Tank, right? So it's like, I'm just going to
Who
make an
does
assumption
really?
that
Go on.
all of our parents were not perfect, nor were they horrible. The worst people on earth, right? Like they're people, right? They're
Yeah.
just people who did their best. Maybe they didn't, give too much thought into parenting. Maybe it happened by accident. Who knows? Type thing, right? But yeah, it's that type of reaction with parents that or the lack of thought or lack of planning that really has to change.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to give you a quick story about my dad. And this is something that I didn't realize stuck with me until probably well into my kids being, 5, 10 years old or something. Back in my day, Dr. Spock was this parenting guy. He wrote the seminal work on parenting or something. I don't think I've ever read it or even seen it, but I've heard about it.
Mm.
And I think my mom must have bought it or wanted to buy it. And my dad's reaction was, no, like I may not know what I'm doing, but, and I'm paraphrasing him, of course, but I may not know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do my best with these kids. And if it turns out good, I think it was partially an Abraham Lincoln quote too. If it turns out good, it's on me. If it turns out bad, it's on me. But I'm not going to have somebody else tell me how to do this.
Right.
And for a large part of it, I'll give him that. At some point, he turned a corner, and I'm glad that I was older when that happened. But I was actually able to see that because I think part of that taking the responsibility on is the key. And some people are better than others, and he was good in most cases, and we've got some challenges to this day because of others. But that's where I get to learn and grow and go, oh, I'm going to follow my middle path from here. So
Middle path.
yeah,
The middle ground. Yeah.
That's the phrase. I like that, because it's my dad. I view my dad. It's kind of a left right, love hate type of situation, right? And it's like, it doesn't need to be that way. It can, I don't need to be exactly like him, nor do I need to be the opposite of him. I can take the good and kind of modify, like you're saying, find that right.
yeah. I think it's a
Yeah.
Buddhist concept too that there.
Everybody but me frozen, or is it me that's frozen?